a Westerner, I would love to know how long would it take for me to get to the alignment that you're promising.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, peace is gained when you sit in being to the point where you stop caring about how long it takes. That's the source of the meaning of the journey, is what it is. It doesn't matter about the destination. That's quite often misinterpreted to think you're supposed to just spontaneously be loving every moment when you may not be loving every moment. It's actually when you begin to rest in the absolute that you don't mind how long it takes. You just know that you're heading in the right direction. And that's true not only from resting in the absolute, but also within a practice that produces goodness within, and you understand the reality of goodness. Like, say you practice compassion meditation within Tibetan Buddhism. You're in such bliss that you're not bound anymore. The ego literally sits back, and once the ego is gone, you're happy to remain forever. In fact, that's the bodhisattva ideal. It's like, I'm happy. You interact with that concept psychologically when you, not just the concept, the actual experience, when you recognize that you would be willing to stick around forever to resolve not only your own stuff, everything that you know is incomplete within you, but when you actually attain bodhicitta, which is the high point of the Tibetan path, then you're actually quite willing to, as strange as it sounds to the Western mind, you're quite willing to stick around until you've seen the whole thing home, because that's when oneness kicks in. You actually realize that if you're not in a complete sense of being one with the world, it's like taking total responsibility is the way it's often described, and it's derived as a thought within the Western culture, but it's actually somewhere deep down you begin to understand from enough meditation, enough experience of oneness, that the whole separative life that we're told is the real world, this is where Buddhism is radical, and this is where I look to attract people who actually have that radical capacity. The separated world is not real. This is what's been said throughout all the traditions, and particularly in Buddhism. That's what Buddha meant by all life is suffering. It means all separated life. Our constant sense of ego, we're born into a world where we're tied to bodies and we're always bashing up against circumstances, and we're never quite happy. We can put a brave face on it, we can improve our thinking, but in the end, we've manifested into a world. It's almost the product of a deluded mind. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But when you begin to see that perfection is actually possible, which can come through the practice of Buddhist Tantra, which I think in many ways is where New Age self-help is actually derived from. It's the sense of absolute possibility. In God, all things are possible, so to speak. God meaning your experience of oneness. So you begin to set up, the more you experience oneness, and both oneness in manifestation and peace within the absolute, you begin to see the unreality of what you were born into. It's like the Matrix. You've taken the red pill, and seriously, you've taken the red pill, and this will never be real to you in a sense. Now, you don't want to subscribe to that as an idea and get carried away with it as a story that you tell your friends, but it's actually real. Because you don't necessarily, it depends on the individual whether they need to even think about that. But my capacity is to help people who need that intellectual, overturning of the paradigm that's failing to satisfy them. To give them a sense both experientially and intellectually, which is a complete experience, and potentially through a kind of a transmission in the body. They're knowing of what really where they're headed. I mean, it's said, to go back to your question, it's said in the traditions that enlightenment could take, you've heard 1,000 lifetimes. And some people go, maybe in 1,000 lifetimes, like Buddha was around for thousands of lifetimes. And then there are other traditions, even within Buddhism, where they set up the paradox which is so present in spirituality, the juxtaposition of the fact, and you can be, as in Zen, enlightened in a flash. You can actually go to the enlightened experience instantly. And once you're in that, then who cares? 1,000 lifetimes. You know you're on the path at that point. You know that the experience of truth is like a virus within the unreal consciousness, exactly like the Matrix. You place the virus of some people who actually get it, and the Matrix is doomed. The unreality is actually doomed because you've seen the truth, and then everything in the being will follow that, whether you like it or not. So in a way it's arduous, just as it was in the Matrix. Those guys, they didn't get the steaks and they lived with the crappy jumpers it was hard, but that's the nature of spiritual development. You wouldn't have it any other way. You want to take that path. You know on some level you will not be satisfied without taking the red pill, so to speak. And again, I can't sell that on someone. Someone's either going to want to go to that place, but I'm just presenting that as that's as far I can take people nowhere near that if it's appropriate, and that far if they want to go that far. But they have to recognize that. I'm not going to shove it down their throat. I don't want people to feel that they're obliged. Because they're not. There's nothing wrong with living within the Matrix if that's what you want. If that's what you recognize you're quite happy with, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you are like so many people who are within what is essentially a stifling paradigm, particularly at this time in history, and you want more, then hell, why not aim for the sky? Do you know what I mean? So if you recognize that, the capacity is there, and you won't be happy with your Tuesday night yoga class. You will explode some of the parts of your life that really just aren't doing anything for you. You will become hardcore about exactly what they say. The Buddha showed. He showed what to give up and what to follow. And he gave 84,000 teachings, so to speak, which is the expression of he gave an individual teaching to everybody, which is the potential of having a one-on-one guidance thing. And it's not just guidance, it's like any kind of situation of coaching or psychology, where it's also coaching from you, finding out what you are ready for, what really comes from you, how far you want to go, what you're looking for.